Rain hammered the stained glass windows, drowning the empty halls of Vincent Black's mansion, a stone monster sitting on a fog-covered hill. Inside, shadows swallowed the high ceilings, where broken chandeliers hung like bones. Vincent, stiff in his sharp suit, stood like a statue in his study. His face looked cold under the desk lamp's glare as he signed papers without feeling. To everyone else, he was a legend, the 34-year-old boss of Blackstone Industries, a billionaire who destroyed competitors and never showed weakness. But here, in this freezing palace of marble, he was just a man trapped in his own life. A clock struck midnight, its sound lost in the storm. Vincent's habits never changed: cold coffee forgotten on his desk, a ledger full of business deals, the sharp smell of whiskey hiding the loneliness. Only the rain and the sound of flipping pages broke the quiet. His hand froze near an open drawer. Inside, a faded photo, a younger Vincent, smiling next to a woman whose face he could not quite remember. He shoved the drawer closed, hard. Outside, lightning tore the sky, lighting up the garden where roses drowned in the rain. One red petal clung to a thorn, refusing to die. Vincent's reflection stared back from the window, his gray eyes as cold as the storm. But tonight, the rain felt heavier. Something was not right. The iron gates of the Black estate creaked open, their rusty hinges screaming as Emily Carter stepped onto the gravel driveway. Her worn coat, patches on the elbows, flapped against the rain, and her boots sank into the mud with every step. She hugged a cracked suitcase, her mother's final gift, to her chest, its weight a reminder of desperate promises made in their tiny apartment. "This job is our only chance." The mansion stood in front of her, its sharp towers stabbing the stormy sky like a castle built for someone who had never known hunger. Money. Control. A life without scars. Margaret Hayes, the head housekeeper, met her at the door with a glare as sharp as the needles in her gray bun. "Late," she hissed, yanking Emily into a marble entrance hall so quiet it felt suffocating. "Mr. Black hates mistakes. Clean. Follow rules. Speak when spoken to." Emily nodded, eyes darting to the ceiling where painted angels smiled down like they were laughing at her. This is not a house, she thought. It is a cage. Her first job, polishing the grand staircase's handrail, its dark wood carved with snakes twisting around roses. Emily scrubbed in silence, her rag rubbing the wood until it shone like black glass. The smell of cleaning oil mixed with the wetness of her clothes. Time melted. When the clock banged 3 times, footsteps echoed cold, steady. Vincent came down the stairs, his perfect suit untouched, eyes glued to a file in his hands. Emily froze, breath stuck. He moved like a ghost, all edges and quiet danger, until his shiny shoe stopped inches from her knees. Name. His voice cut the air like a knife. Emily stood too fast, legs shaky. Emily Carter, sir. The new maid. She kept her gaze down but still saw his stare, gray ice that made her skin burn. Vincent's jaw flexed. Do not get in my way. He walked past, his scent, citrus and something bitter, hanging heavy even after he disappeared. Margaret appeared like a shadow. Finish the east wing by sunset, she ordered, slapping a soapy bucket into Emily's hands. Alone, Emily scrubbed floors that already sparkled, her face looking twisted in the shiny floor. Through a rain-smeared window, she spotted Vincent in the garden, still under a black umbrella. Lightning flashed, showing roses drowning in mud. One red flower fought the wind, refusing to fall. Vincent's fingers twitched, almost reaching, before he turned sharply, storming back inside. That night, curled in her attic bed, Emily clutched the locket around her neck, its tiny photo of her mother's smile worn but warm. Hold on. For her. Downstairs, Vincent paced his study, the file abandoned. His hand hovered over the drawer hiding the faded picture. The rain beat harder now, like the sky itself was screaming, "This is where it begins." The mansion's quiet grew heavier after midnight, interrupted only by the groan of old floors as Emily crept into Vincent's study. Moonlight leaked through thick curtains, casting bone-like shadows over walls crowded with dusty books and framed awards. Margaret had ordered her to wipe the shelves, not one speck, girl, but Emily's eyes locked onto the wooden desk, spotless except for an open book, Shakespeare's sonnets, its pages cracked with notes in neat, swirling handwriting. She dragged a gloved finger over a line, "Love is not time is fool," the ink slightly smeared, like someone had pressed too hard. Emily's chest ached. This was not the scribble of a cold-hearted CEO. Footsteps thudded in the hall. She slammed the book shut, but the smell of citrus hit her first. Vincent filled the doorway, his outline sharp against the hallway's dim light. Emily froze, clutching her dust rag. For a second, his gaze darted to the book, then back. Something raw flickered in his eyes, a crack in steel, before his face went blank again. "You make a habit of spying, Miss Carter?" His voice was quiet poison. "No, sir. Just cleaning." She ducked her head, heart pounding. Vincent stepped closer, his shadow swallowing her whole. He picked up the book, thumb rubbing the cover like it was bruised. "This," he said, "is not your business." Emily risked a glance up. His jaw was tight, but his grip whitened on the book. He is not mad, she realized. He is scared. "I did not mean anything." "Do not mean anything again." He shoved the book back on the shelf, stiff as a robot. "Curiosity is dangerous here." She ran, the halls feeling like a maze. That night, in her attic, she dreamed of roses crushed under rain. Vincent did not sleep. He drowned a glass of whiskey, staring at the hidden photo. The woman's face, his mother, was still foggy, but her voice hummed in his skull. Weakness, he told himself. Stupid. Yet his fingers brushed the sonnet book, its pages still warm where Emily had touched them. At dawn, Emily hacked dead roses in the garden, mud staining her knees. Vincent watched from his window, unseen. Her braid unraveled as she worked, and he gritted his teeth, not sure why her stubbornness annoyed him. Why her being there made the mansion's silence feel less like peace and more like a trap. In the study, the book lay open again. The storm roared back, screaming through the mansion's chimneys like an angry ghost. Emily crouched in the parlor, polishing silverware by flickering candlelight, her face twisted in a teapot's curve. Margaret had forced her to stay late. "Mr. Black has guests tomorrow. Every fork shines, or you are gone." But the real torture was the quiet. Hours dragged, thick and heavy, broken only by the fireplace's dying cough. Upstairs, Vincent paced. Richard Carson's letter glared up from his desk. "In town next week. Let's discuss the merger, and that nervous little maid you have got." He crushed the paper, hurling it into the fire. Flames ate Richard's smug words. Outside, thunder punched the windows. Vincent's hand twitched toward the whiskey bottle, then he spun, storming into the garden. Rain stabbed Emily's skin as she sprinted across the courtyard, arms full of forgotten laundry. The greenhouse shook ahead, glass panes clattering. Inside, the air reeked of wet dirt and roses, deep red flowers Vincent guarded like secrets. She dropped the linens, breath fogging the glass. A shadow shifted. Vincent stood at the far wall, sleeves rolled up, clippers in hand. Rain soaked his hair, dripping down his neck as he held a rose, its petals battered by wind. Emily froze, but a floorboard squeaked. He turned, his stare cutting through the damp. "Why are you here?" "The laundry, sir." "I did not leave." She bent to grab the sheets, hands shaking. A thorn ripped her sleeve, slicing her arm. Vincent's clippers froze. "You are bleeding," he said, voice flat. Red bloomed on her wrist. "It is fine." She pressed fabric to the cut. "Stupid." He stepped closer, voice rough. "Roses bite." Lightning flashed, lighting the scar from his collarbone to jaw, a mark she had never questioned. For a second, his mask cracked. Emily saw it, the ghost of a boy who had cared about gardens before money turned him to stone. Vincent ripped a strip from his handkerchief, wrapping her wrist with unexpected softness. His hands lingered, rough but warm. "Go," he growled, turning back to the roses. "Before the storm kills us." Emily ran, the greenhouse door banging shut. Vincent stared at the rose in his fist, thorns stabbing his palm. Blood mixed with rain, staining petals. Weakness, he thought. Hers, or mine? In her attic, Emily unfolded the handkerchief. A faded crest sat in the corner, an eagle gripping a rose. She pressed it to her chest, the storm's rage fading under her heartbeat. Downstairs, Vincent poured whiskey over his bleeding hand, the sting a relief. Richard's letter was ash, but the threat stuck. "She is just a maid," he told the empty study. The lie tasted bitter. Moonlight poured through the dining room's tall windows, bouncing off polished silver and glittering glasses set in perfect rows. The storm was gone, but the air felt charged. Emily straightened her stiff uniform, her thumb brushing the hidden handkerchief in her pocket, the eagle and rose crest now her quiet armor. At the table's head, Vincent sat like a statue, his eyes locked on the empty seat across. The doors slammed open. Richard Carson swaggered in, wearing a sleek gray suit that hugged his thin frame, a white rose pinned to his chest. "Sorry I am late," he said, smirking like he had planned it. "Bad weather." His stare slid to Emily as she poured red wine. "But this view is worth the wait." Vincent's grip crushed his fork. "We are here to talk business, Carson. Not your hobbies." Richard leaned back, swirling his drink. "So serious, Black. A billionaire should enjoy pretty things." He watched Emily vanish into the shadows. "Tell me, does your maid read sonnets too, or is that just your sad little secret?" A glass smashed. Margaret swooped in to clean it, but Emily saw Vincent's mask slip, a flash of teeth, gone fast. Dinner dragged, fish, steak, fancy cake. Richard picked at each dish with sly jokes, his insults wrapped in smiles. Emily kept her head down but felt Vincent's glare every time Richard complimented her wine picks. "Bravo, Black," Richard said, plucking a rose from the table. "A maid who knows her wines? I might steal her." He spun the flower, thorns scraping his thumb. "But you have always liked dangerous pets." Vincent shot up, his chair screaming on the floor. "Meeting is over." Richard laughed, tossing the rose onto his plate. "Next week, then." Emily bolted to the kitchen, heart racing. Behind her, Vincent's voice sliced the air, "Stay away from him." She turned. He stood in the doorway, the chandelier's light carving his scar into sharp relief. "Richard likes to collect pretty things," he said, voice lower. "Then he smashes them." Thunder growled far off. Emily clenched the handkerchief. "I am not pretty or breakable." Vincent's eyes dropped to her bare wrist, where his bandage had been. "No," he admitted. "But he is." Rain started again as Richard's car disappeared. In his study, Vincent downed whiskey, the merger papers blurring. Weakness, he thought, tracing the eagle on his desk. But when Emily's footsteps passed his door, he stayed silent. The greenhouse shook under the storm's weight, glass rattling as Emily knelt in the dirt, trimming dead roses. The air smelled like wet earth and trouble. Vincent's warning about Richard, "He breaks them," echoed, but it was the shake in his voice that stuck with her. Gravel crunched behind her. She turned, expecting Margaret's lecture. Instead, Vincent stood framed by the mansion's glow, his coat collar turned up against the wind. A candle flickered in his hand, lighting his scar like a crack in stone. "You should not be here," he said, though he made no move to leave. Emily stood, mud on her knees. Roses needed tending. He stepped inside, candlelight glinting off his sweat. "They will die anyway. Winter comes for everything. Not if you fight for them." She pointed to a tight red bud fighting the cold. Vincent laughed, sharp and hollow. "Fight?" He set the candle on a rusty table, flame dancing. "You think this is living? These walls, it is a grave." Emily hesitated. The air between them thickened, charged like the storm. "Then why stay?" He turned, his reflection breaking in the glass. "Some cages are of our own making." Rain attacked the roof as Emily pulled the handkerchief from her pocket, eagle crest frayed but alive. "You dropped this." Vincent froze. For a second, his face broke, pain, anger, want all crashing in. He reached for it, but his fingers grazed hers instead. The contact jolted them both. "Why do you keep it?" She whispered. His thumb traced the eagle. It belonged to someone who believed cages could be unlocked. Lightning split the sky. Emily saw the photo in his coat, a woman's face clear now, sharp cheekbones, eyes like his, sadness deep as roots. Your mom, Emily breathed. Vincent jerked back. Leave. She did not move. You are not the only one who has lost someone. The storm screamed. Rain blurred the world. Vincent's shoulders dropped. She planted these roses, he rasped. Before the fire. Before he. His voice cracked. Emily stepped closer, hand near his arm. He did not pull away. You are not alone, she said. Thunder roared. Vincent turned, breath hot on her skin. Emily, I. The candle died. In the dark, his lips found hers, a mix of need and comfort, salt and citrus. The storm ate his groan, her gasp, all the unspoken words. When they broke apart, the door crashed open. Margaret stood rigid in the doorway. Mr. Black. Richard's calling. Vincent's grip tightened on Emily's hip before he released her. Tell him I am busy. But the spell was broken. As he left, Emily pressed the handkerchief to her lips, tasting whiskey and roses. Upstairs, Vincent watched Richard's name flash on his phone, merger papers burning in the fire. Cages can open, he thought. But first, the eagle has to fight. The storm left the mansion bare. Rain stabbed the windows as Vincent paced his study, merger papers burning in the fire. Flames ate Richard's name, each sparked defiance. The memory of Emily's kiss stuck, citrus and salt, a mix he could not shake. The eagle-crested handkerchief lay open on his desk, threads glowing in the firelight. Weakness, he told himself. But his fingers shook tracing the embroidery. Downstairs, Emily scrubbed the greenhouse's mud-stained floor, skin still buzzing from the kiss. Margaret's glare burned her neck. Disgraceful, the housekeeper spat, shoving a bucket of boiling water at her. Think you are special? He will toss you out like trash. Emily stayed quiet. Let her rage. She had survived worse. At midnight, she dusted the library shelves. A ledger fell, spilling papers, old financial reports, numbers swimming in red. Blackstone Industries, fire repairs. Her throat closed. Dates matched Vincent's scar, his mother's photo, the roses. The fire was not random. Footsteps echoed. She shoved the ledger back, but Vincent stood in the doorway, his eyes hollow. What did you find? Nothing. He stepped closer, whiskey on his breath. Liar. Emily held his stare. Who set the fire? Silence. Then a broken laugh. My father. Vincent collapsed into a chair, shadows making his face look gaunt. He burned it all, the garden, the east wing, her. For money. For power. His nails dug into the armrest. I tried to save her. The roses, she loved them more than him. Emily knelt beside him, her hand hovering over his. He did not pull away. Why tell me? Because you see the rot, he said, voice cracking. And you are still here. The truth hung between them, thin as the rose fighting outside. Dawn was gray when Richard's car roared up the driveway. Vincent met him at the door, coat tight, mask back on. Richard smirked, a white rose on his lapel. Ready to surrender, Black? Deal is off. Richard's smile died. You will regret this. I already do. As the car left, Emily stepped from the shadows, ledger pressed to her chest. Vincent's voice wavered. That proof could destroy me. Or save you, she said. In the study, he burned the ledger. But Emily had already memorized every page. Vincent's hands were gray with ledger ash. Dawnlight crawled through the study curtains, the fire now dead. Emily stood in the doorway, her silence louder than screams. Richard's attack came at noon. Black cars surrounded the mansion, cameras flashing like gunfire. Blackstone heir hides arson crimes. Headlines roared. Vincent watched from the window, jaw locked, as reporters tore his life apart. Richard stood among them, smirking, lighting a cigar with the burning newspaper. Emily found Vincent in the garden, fists shoved into rose thorns, blood-staining petals. "They will end you," she said, voice steady. He laughed, broken. "Let them. I am already dead." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "Fight. Use the truth." "Truth?" He yanked free, thorns ripping skin. "My father bought judges, politicians, gods. You think words can bury him?" Emily pulled a page from her pocket, copied ledger lines, her writing tight. "I am not asking you to bury him. I am asking you to live." Vincent stared, his mother's voice howling in his head. They met a journalist at midnight in the greenhouse, a sharp-eyed woman known for wrecking dynasties. "Proof," she demanded, snapping photos of the copied page. Vincent lurked in shadows. "Publish this, and you will have a price on your head." The journalist grinned. "Kid, I have survived worse men than your daddy." As her car vanished down the drive, Vincent turned to Emily. "Why?" She touched his scar, her fingers tracing the ridge of old pain. "Because someone once told me roses can outlive storms." He kissed her, slow, desperate, a man clinging to a raft in open sea. Above, rain hammered the glass roof. Richard struck at dawn. Vincent's phone buzzed with a video, Emily in the garden, ledger page in hand. "Sign over the shares," Richard's voice oozed, "or I will snap your little maid into pieces." Vincent roared, smashing the phone. But Emily was gone, kidnapped from the market by men with Richard's crest on their sleeves. Vincent revved his car, the copied ledger burning in his pocket. Rain blurred the windshield, but his eyes were clear, a predator unleashed. Emily woke in a rotting warehouse, wrists tied with Richard's silk scarves. He lounged on a couch, twirling a rose. "Cute stunt," he sneered. "Think love fixes broken things?" She spat at his shoes. "You do not know him." Richard slapped her, thorns cutting her cheek. "Oh, but I do. And when he walks through that door, I will make sure you watch him break." Engines growled outside. Headlights stabbed through cracks in the walls. Somewhere beyond, a storm raged, and with it, a man who had stopped fearing monsters. Rain hammered the rusty warehouse roof like war drums. Vincent's car screeched to a stop, headlights cutting through the dark. Inside, Richard's laugh hissed through the air. "Right on time, Black. Would not want her to miss the fun." Vincent stepped into the gloom, water soaking his boots. The stink of oil and rot filled the space. Richard sat on a crate, Emily tied at his feet, spinning a rose stem. Blood dripped from her lip, but her eyes burned, fierce, unbroken. "Let her go." Vincent's voice was iron. Richard smirked, snapping the rose. "Or what? You will burn this place down too?" He tossed petals into the dark. "You are just a scared kid in a suit." Vincent's hand brushed his coat, the copied ledger pages inside. "I am not here for games. I am here for her." Emily locked eyes with him. "Do not." Richard snapped his fingers. Two thugs lunged. Vincent dodged a crowbar, its swing nicking his forehead. Blood dripped, but rage took over years of fists and fury. He broke a knee, wrestled a knife away, the fight messy and raw. Richard rolled his eyes, sad. He pressed a blade to Emily's neck. "Beg, Black. Let her hear you crack." Vincent froze, breathing hard. The storm screamed, and in it, he heard his mother's voice, "Roses survive." "You want truth?" Vincent threw the ledger pages into the air. "Here. My dad's crimes. Your dirty deals. Let the world see you are just a rat gnawing on scraps." Richard's smirk died. "You." Emily moved. Her tied hands grabbed the knife, slicing her binds as she stabbed his leg. Richard shrieked, crumpling into mud. Vincent was on him, fists flying, for every lie, every scar, every stolen night. Richard's face turned to pulp. "Stop." Emily gripped Vincent's arm. He is not worth it. Sirens wailed outside. The storm broke, dawn glowing through clouds. Vincent cradled Emily's face, thumb wiping blood. I am sorry. She pressed the eagle-crested handkerchief to his cot. We are free. Cops flooded the warehouse. Vincent carried Emily past the wreckage, Richard's curses fading. The mansion waited ahead, gates creaking open. In the garden, roses stood tall, thorns gleaming wet. The scandal burned hot, then died. Headline shifted, Blackstone heir exposes father's crimes, Carson empire collapses. The world moved on, hunting new drama. Vincent's mansion, once a marble tomb, now hummed with life. Emily stood in the garden, clippers in hand, sunlight dotting roses that had survived the storms. Petals once crushed now bloomed bold. The greenhouse stood rebuilt, glass scrubbed clean of ghosts. Gravel crunched, Vincent approached, sleeves rolled up, dirt smearing his forearms. Reporter called, he said, joining her. Wants an update. Emily snipped a dead thorn. And? I told her we are retired. She laughed, light as breeze. Since when do you avoid cameras? Since I found better things to protect. His hand brushed hers, rough but sure. Inside, the study shed its old skin, no more ledgers, just dog-eared books and Emily's pressed roses under glass. The eagle-crested handkerchief hung framed, a relic of wars won. Margaret lingered in the hall, spine still steel. The board demands a statement, she muttered, but her bite was gone. Tell him I am gardening, Vincent said, sipping Emily's bitter coffee, perfect to him. Dusk found them on the porch, sky-streaked gold and purple. Emily's locket gleamed, its photo now Vincent scowling as she laughed. Below, reporters camped at the gates, their shouts drowned by rustling leaves. They will never quit, Vincent said, eyeing a buzzing drone. Emily leaned into him. Let them gossip. We have beaten worse. He turned her face, thumb tracing the scar Richard's rose had left. I do not deserve you. Nope, she smiled. But I am here anyway. Night fell dry for the first time in months. Moonlight silvered the roses, thorns glinting with dew. Vincent draped his coat over Emily's shoulders, breath warm on her neck. What now? She nodded to the horizon, dawn cracking the sky. We live.